Thank you, Morley. This first, could you back it up one more?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No problem. This slide is the median age for first marriage within the emerging generations, going back really to the 1920s and through 40s, with the GI generation going to the millennials at present. And what you can see is pretty clearly that people are marrying at later and later ages, and that has been going on historically for more than half a century. And as Kristen pointed out, it's reaching its peak, at least at this point, among millennials. There are three reasons for this, I would think. One of them is that millennials, as Morley pointed out, are a civic generation. So you can see on the far left that GI generation actually married later than the following generation, silents and boomers, did in the 1950s through the 1970s. Civic generation, for a variety of reasons, their lifestyles, the way their desire to try to be careful with their lives has dictates that, and that's been a historical factor for civic generation throughout our history. So that's one factor. Another is that over time, what we are seeing is an increasing sense of extending the growing up period. In the early part of the 20th century, the phrase adolescence was first coined, and that spoke to the GI generation. Now we have people talking about emerging adulthood. And finally, as has been pointed out, economic factors such as the recession are just causing people to be more cautious as they move forward. Next slide, please. As Kristen pointed out, millennials are family attitudes are changing over time. The millennial family is becoming, our whole definition of family is changing from a notion of a man and a woman, from children, usually of the same race, usually of the same religion, and this slide reflects these attitudes. These attitudes will be driven, the changes that Kristen talked about, I think, are in fact being driven more by the millennial generation than anything else. Older generations have been a little more resistant to change, but a majority of millennials approve of gay couples raising children. Only a third disapprove. There is certainly minimal concern among millennials of mothers of young children or even fathers of young children working outside the home. There's going to be sharing of that. The whole notion of couples living together without marriage obviously is not a concern. And finally, interracial marriage, disapproval of that has dropped to almost non-existent, and you could extend that to religion as well. That those are huge trends as American families become more diverse, both in terms of their faith and in terms of their ethnicity. Next slide, please. Millennials are concerned, as Kristen pointed out, there are some traditional values that over time things are going to happen with millennials. They are going to marry, but nevertheless, it's quite clear that being a parent is, in fact, of greater importance than being married. So on the left, you see that a majority of millennials rate being a good parent as an important priority. Only about 20% at this point believe that having a successful marriage is an important priority. So clearly there's a sense, I think, that one can exist without the other. And in the middle is owning their own home. Millennials still have a desire. These are the top three in priorities. Millennials still have a desire to own their own homes. The next slide illustrates where those homes will be. Millennials are going to live, and they want to live in the suburbs. A majority of millennials currently live in the suburbs, and a clear plurality of millennials, 43% of them, in fact, say that the ideal place for them to live is in the suburbs. This really dwarfs that of other generations. Relatively few millennials want to live in big cities or small towns or in the country. So the suburbs where millennials live now are where they will want to live in the future for a variety of reasons. They see a lot of advantages to that, educational opportunities for their children, more space, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. As Kristen pointed out, what we are seeing is multi-generational families, but we believe that these are going to be very clearly located in the suburbs. There are a variety of reasons for this. One is millennials like their kids, like their parents. Millennials have been friends with their parents throughout their entirety of their lives. And even more important, I think, they will want to live close to them, and they perceive an obligation to live and support their more elderly parents as their parents age to a far greater degree than boomers or Gen Xers do. Next slide. One of the things we are going to see is quite clearly an emergence of women in this generation. This is a accelerating trend, but millennials are, if anything, the first female-dominant generation or driven generation in American history. By 2016, a majority of those who earn associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and even doctorates are going to be earned by women in the United States. This is a major change. With the GI generation back in the 1920s and 30s, that was the first generation in which high school education became equal for men and women, and now in the next civic generation, the millennials, we are seeing that occur at the college level. Next slide. What this ends up producing is that the American workforce is going to change drastically. Women are going to be taking and are taking what have been considered to be traditionally male jobs in large numbers, ranging from obviously being in the military to medicine, law, things of that nature. But the bigger change may end up being, or an equally important change, is that men are going to have to be willing and capable of taking on what have been traditionally considered to be female jobs, teaching, nursing, things of that nature. Otherwise, large numbers of jobs are going to go unfilled in the American economy. So we are going to see a much more gender diverse workforce than we have seen in the past. Next slide. What all this means is that companies are going to have to change to accommodate the changes in millennial families. We are going to see increasing telecommuting, more flexible hours, child care possibilities within the workplace, and round-the-clock access to technology that will create a seamless blend between working and raising a family. Next slide. This slide illustrates, as we all know, that younger people are more adept, more concerned with technology than older people. That isn't anything that's shocking. But what is interesting here is the relative importance of the cell phone and really other more mobile devices such as the iPad to millennials compared to other generations. Millennials are really driven by this desire for mobility. Things such as a home computer and high-speed internet, while they are important to millennials, are not as important to millennials as they are for Generation X. So all of this is going to be driven. Millennials are going to increasingly demand and value mobile technology. Next slide. This will actually end up being a global phenomenon. There is some dispute among generational theorists about whether these generational differences we've been talking about will exist in other countries, but given the changes in technology, given the fact that the Earth and the world is becoming increasingly flat due to these technologies, we would expect that in the future, generational differences are going to be as great or maybe even greater than cultural or national differences. So be prepared for change in the future. The millennials will be driving it, and this change is about to happen and is coming. Thanks very much for your attention. The Millennial Era has arrived, and these are some ways that any of you would like to connect with us that you can do that.